get in your dinghy and come out and surf this.
This is living.
Awesome, welcome guys. We are here with a really special guest. We've got Rod Waterhouse, and we thought we'd take advantage of this awesome weather today. It's about 37 knots outside, cold, drizzly. We were going to do it outside. We thought it'd be awesome with the sun and everything, but instead we're going to be all nice and cozy inside.
Yeah, we're all going to go for a skinny dip after this.
Don't know about that, but we thought we'd have a share of coffee. For those who have watched many of our videos, I have mentioned Rod many a times, and Rod was like instrumental in us actually committing to this journey and the information he gave us in the beginning. So I'll give a quick intro to Rod. Rod Waterhouse is from DBY Yachting, and he's a yacht broker, but also a very well accomplished sailor, and has done this trip himself how many times?
5 times.
5 times. So he's done what we've done 5 times already. So not only is there an absolute wealth of knowledge of just the cruising, but also the types of boats to do it. We met Rod through sailing, so through me sailing the skiffs. We started off talking to Rod about probably a year before we set off, maybe a bit longer, a year and a half.
And we were definitely too chicken shit to actually put the wheels in motion. It was just more of a pipe dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was definitely Rod that kind of lit the firecracker up our butt and kind of told us it's possible. Like, I think that's the first thing. It was Rod that told us it was possible and gave us the framework to do it. And I think that's a really important thing, because so many of our YouTubers and our followers ask us, how do we do it? What are the steps in getting a boat? What do we need to be thinking about? And how do we commit to this journey? So we should also say at this point that Rod, whether we were doing this whether we were going to sell the boat or not, but we're actually going to use Rod to sell the boat, and we're going to use DBY as a brokerage to sell Avalon. Just being upfront with that, but also, yeah, we thought we'd just bring this absolute pot of knowledge to you guys, answer all your questions. I'm still happy to answer your questions too, but
Jackson's basically doing this so that he can get off his emails.
Yeah, and we can just put a video out there. And hey, I would also say, if you want to contact Rod after this and you got other questions, we can facilitate that too. So Rod, why don't you tell us a little about yourself, your cruising history, and a little bit about DBY?
Well, before as a broker, I had no profession, nothing to do with sailing. But I've been sailing most of my life.
Yeah.
Married in 1981. Yeah. And straight after I married Kerry, we had a bad day at work, and it was quite strange actually, because we were really racing people. We never considered cruising.
Yep.
We got triggered. We're not quite sure what it was. A bad day at work. I came home and said, look, I'm really keen on maybe going cruising, and that was it. From that point, we had no one telling us what to do, no advice, and we went out and bought absolutely the wrong boat. We went and bought a 31-foot catamaran that wasn't even built yet. It was in pieces. Bought the mouldings. We weren't boat builders either.
Yeah.
And we put this boat together over 6 months with a team of people helping us.
Wow. And was that in Australia?
That was in Sydney, in an orchard at the back of Pennant Hills, actually. Yeah. So we built a 31-foot catamaran. We then did a shakedown cruise up to Queensland from Sydney, scared ourselves to death, made a few corrections, and then headed off the wrong way.
Yeah.
Ended up in San Francisco.
Wow.
New Zealand, Cook Islands, Tahiti, Hawaii, but absolutely the wrong way. So
yeah.
We did everything wrong.
Yeah.
The wrong boat.
Yeah.
The wrong way.
Yeah.
And we somehow survived.
Yeah.
And that became the template for the rest of our lives.
It can only get better from here.
It can only get better. So that's how it started.
Yeah, awesome.
Back in those days, the multi-hulls were not the best multi-hulls either. Very different today. So we really did put ourselves out there. Yeah. And by the time we got there, we were call ourselves accomplished cruisers after that trip.
Yeah.
But what's very interesting about that trip is that accidentally, to fund that, to buy that boat, we had a share in a property. We sold property to buy a boat. The worst thing you can possibly do.
Yeah.
Once again, no one else telling us not to do it.
Yeah.
But what was amazing, we accidentally made money because we had got a boat, which is unusual, to America. There was nothing like it, and someone decided they had to have it. The day we sold the boat, it just happened the Australian dollar was the lowest in history. Accidentally, our exchange rate worked in our favour, and we made money.
Made money, wow.
And that became, from that, we designed future trips around making money or coming out even. So that's how our cruising rolled around actually
making money off the boats. Yeah.
And and there was no one else doing that stuff then.
Absolutely.
That's how that's how we funded our sailing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's we definitely thought about that too. Like, it is, for young people, we found it quite a challenge to part with that money. And so it was definitely a lot of reassurance to think that the way we did it, and we were strategic through you of like we bought in the Mediterranean, but I guess that understanding of like thinking about the trip you want to do, like if you want to go traveling for 1 year, 2 years, what's the end game? Because if your end game is to hold on a boat for the next 20 years, you're probably buying a different boat. But if your end game is to sell that boat, then there's probably another level of research and investigation as to where you can buy and where you want to sell. Exactly. And how that trip kind of goes.
Yeah, and it's a moving target because that boat was reverse to what you did. We went west to east, but it worked because of the exchange rate, and it was the type of boat. It was unusual. That's why it's worth more, etc. In your case, production boats, small production boats are in demand in Australia, and obviously from what you found, great value for money in Europe. Downwind all the way, it's downwind sail.
Yeah.
Yeah,
not upwind. So perfect.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think there's so much information online that just rag production boats as not blue water cruises.
Yeah, we were having so many people say, oh, beware, all the boats you're looking at are not blue water capable.
Yeah.
But we just kind of closed our ears to that because we had sort of advice from Rod and we trusted Rod, so I'm glad we did.
Yeah, but also, like, I would have to say, I reckon maybe 75% of the boats were all production boats.
Yeah.
Whether cats or monohulls.
Yeah.
Oh,
It comes down to logic. I mean, it was interesting. We were very fortunate in the first boat, as I said, was completely wrong.
Yeah.
We went the wrong way, the wrong boat.
Yeah.
But guess what? We made it.
And why was it the wrong boat?
It was too light. 31 foot, 1980s, early 80s, multi-hull, very light, very dangerous, very fast.
Yeah.
Very fine in the bows, easily either break up, capsize. So we were literally going up when in big gusts we'd throw the sheet to stop us capsizing. And it was crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But there was no one in those days. There was no website. There was no one telling us.
Yeah.
You guys are nuts.
Yeah.
Wrong. It was we were
sailing a Hobie cat over to.
But when it came to picking a boat, our next cruising boats, we knew we weren't going to buy a multi-hull. But because people would say you have to buy a heavy displacement boat, which you've heard this. It didn't add up to me because the reality was I knew how to sail a super light boat the wrong way. Production boats, tried, trusted, lots of them in charter, big volume and fast, good value for money, and good demand on the resale at the end of the game in Australia. So we immediately switched. We were very early when we were first cruising production boats. There wasn't people cruising production boats.
Sure.
We were one of the first to cruise in Benettos, Genoes.
And like really production boats, like would we be right in saying that they really started becoming popular in like the 90s? Like,
yeah, they were popular, but they were still frowned on as charter boats.
Yeah.
But it was quite strange. What was happening was in Europe and North America, production boats were charter boats, mass production charter boats. In Australia, Beneteau, for some reason, had this reputation as quality. It was a
Oh, interesting. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So there was the opportunity.
Yeah,
we
sure.
knew that we'd get one of these charter boats, sail it downwind to Sydney.
Yeah.
We'd make money, and in fact that's what we did. They were in good demand here, different perception in Australia. But the boats proved to be very reliable, quick, easy to maintain. And everyone was saying you can't do it, it's the wrong boat. Well, we were right, they were wrong. So
Was Kerry a skiff sailor as well?
yes, we're both
thank
both
God.
sailors, both skiffs and similar. So we loved our sailing.
Yeah.
And performance-wise, these boats do perform well.
Yeah.
But not only that, they're safer, they're stronger. We had less issues. You know, we could fix everything, whereas you can't on some of these heavy disposal boats.
Yeah, that is something I do like about the production boats, in that once I wouldn't buy maybe the first round of a new model, and it's like I would wait to the second round.
Exactly.
But it is no different to anything else, like mass-produced cars and all that kind of stuff. Like they're bringing them out pretty finely tuned and like off a really good basis and mold. It's like, and I thought, if we talk about the charter versus private, we get a lot of questions about that as well.
Yeah.
And you know, it's almost a bit like a taxi. Like, you know, the taxis go out and get the most reliable car they can, because it just needs to keep going day in, day out. And that's how I kind of felt about the production boats. Half the charter boats we went and looked at
We're a mess.
were a mess. Like, they had been trashed, and they were like the shitty taxi you get in every now and again, where you just like, this has got to get off the road. But then there was like another half of charter boats that were actually really well maintained and had been used day in, day out for 20 years. And most of the boats, like, we're here in Newport, how many of these boats leave the mooring? Most of them sit out here for their whole life and don't get used. Whereas like a production boat gets used day in, day out. Charter boat. And so I guess that mindset for us changed. Like, because me, in doing my millions of hours of research, was like, oh, I'm not buying a charter boat. Like, but I guess you helped to really open up my eyes of that.
It's back to front thinking, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was interesting. First, before I forget, it was in choosing one of those brands. So you're picking the charter boats or whatever. Say Jeanneau, Benetton.
Yeah.
One mistake we did make was we had a really good experience. We picked up a Jeanneau 44. We picked it up in the west coast of the US. Our first production boat, and this is in the early 90s. And we sailed that across the Pacific, and it was absolutely fantastic for all the reasons you described. It was well known design. It was reliable, and we had a fantastic trip, to the point where we were so impressed by the Jeanneau that we had, we decided we were going to buy another one, but a bigger one.
Yeah.
We get kids along, etc. So we went to Europe, and we thought, right, get a Jeanneau. We went and found a Jeanneau 47, just a bigger version that we had. We picked that boat up. Within a month, we knew it was the wrong boat. It was terrible.
Interesting.
It would basically, we'd go downwind, poled out, and it would roll, and we hit the mast and water. It capsized the mast and water twice, because the keel was the wrong shape. It turned out the keel was the wrong shape. It was planning up on the wrong side of the wind keel.
Oh, right.
And what happened is they ended up, that model, they only produced a very short run for obvious reasons. They then changed it. It became the Jeanneau 45-5, and then, which was super successful with the issue fixed. So the golden rule became, this happened with a number of different boats I see come to the brands that come to the brokerage. Every brand has good and bad models, and you must do the research and find out which are the good and bad models. Obviously longer run versions are longer run. But as far as charter or non-charter, we find that depends on the charter region. So I think you bought your boat in the Ionian, did you?
Yeah, top of Croatia. Yep.
And we find in general in the Ionian, the charter boats are in much better condition, because it's quite soft conditions. It's motoring territory more than sailing. And also the charter companies there over-service the boats. They get paid to run these charter boats, charter them out, but they also get paid to service them, and they make money over-servicing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right.
So the boats,
that makes yeah.
The charter, the owners miss out.
Yeah, sure.
But these boats are over-serviced, underworked, Whereas the reverse happens, saying Whitsundays or Caribbean, they're actually ragged.
Yeah, we've had some shockers. Like we've had a few friends who chartered a boat at the Whitsundays. They've gone on the boat and gone, "What is this?"
Exactly. Yeah.
So.
And our friends, I was going to say, and our friends, Sailing Inspire, who left their boat to charter, like they left their boat to charter for a season in the BVIs, and came back and were really disappointed on the amount of maintenance and serviceability that have been performed on their boat.
I think with Avalon we were lucky because she was owned by a marina, so they had the tools and the resources and the labour to look after her, so she was kind of in spick and span condition. But that's another reason why I would say I think it's probably not the best idea to buy a boat sight unseen. You really need to go and have a look at the boat, see how it's been maintained, and see it for yourself, because you just don't know until you go.
Yeah, I guess one of the other really good bits of advice that Rod gave us, because we went to him with all these questions of what kind of boat should we buy, what's the best boat to cruise in, blah blah blah, and you know what, everyone is different, whether you got families, one person, two persons, a dog, you know, the kind of sailing you like to do. The first bit of advice you gave us was just get on as many boats as possible, walk the docks, and if you see someone, like, the cruising industry is super friendly. If you see someone there on their boat and they're just sort of having a cup of tea, just start talking to them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ask them about their boat.
Yeah.
Say, what do you like about this boat? We're thinking about doing this trip. If there's one thing, people love talking about their own boat.
It's really fun, actually. We made some great friends from doing that. So.
And then part of our framework when we were purchasing our boat was Rod had suggested that we actually go over for a holiday to Croatia and start seeing these boats. And just go and do the research. And, you know, put it in your budget of, I'm going to go spend 2 weeks on a holiday in Croatia looking at boats, no strings attached. If I find the one, I find the one. If I don't, I'll come back in 6 months. And just start looking at boats and getting on there, looking at all the nooks and crannies, and like in 2 weeks, we saw 15 boats.
Yeah, we did well, didn't we?
I remember telling you guys that buying the boat's actually the easiest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to be there. The biggest problem with Europe, buying a boat in Europe, is the brokers are inundated with overseas inquiries. They don't want to know you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You'll make an inquiry, you won't get a response.
Yep.
A boat for sale will not be there, it'll be in another country or a charter. Really, it doesn't work. It's good to look at boats online to get a bit of an idea, but the reality is often very different. So yeah, it's worth, as you did, going there and walking the docks. There's tons of boats.
Oh, yeah.
All very similar, but obviously important to get some independent advice as to the attributes of those various boats. The resale, the reliability, etc.
I think you're spot on with that, because I think I would have, over the period of maybe a year, I think I probably would have emailed 500 boats.
Crickets.
You're mad.
Like I think I would have, like,
Wow.
especially when you're on whatever it is, Yacht World or something, and you've got your password and you just say send inquiry.
Yeah.
You know, I reckon I would have easily spent it on 500 boats. Out of that, I reckon I would have got maybe 80 genuine replies. And out of those replies, it was like, we got a short list of 20 boats.
Yeah.
So out of 500 boats, I actually got down to a short list of 20 boats that, as you said, were in the location they said, were actually available. Because there's so much stuff up there on Yacht World and that's like, the boat's actually not available.
That's right.
It's like, oh, it's available in 2 years after charter.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why is it being advertised now? Like, you know, we'd find boats like that all the time, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and it's the same old story. If you're there, the broker meets you, they take you seriously, you're going to get the best deals, you're going to get the best range to look at if you're there. And
Oh, totally.
Huge difference.
And I think out of the 15 boats that we went to see, we only saw 10 of them, and we saw 5 boats that we didn't know were available.
Existed, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, and like that, you know, that's a third of the boats.
Yeah.
It was a really daunting prospect when Rod suggested that we flew out to Croatia, you know, and spend all that money to go to Europe twice in the space of a couple of months. You know, I don't think we would have come up with that ourselves. It just
No.
didn't. It sounded illogical to us without having got that advice from Rod.
But you pay it back on the back end, right? Because then it was about coming back to Australia. If you do find the boat, then it was like, and it did take us 3 months to actually
complete the
buy the
sale.
boat.
Yeah.
And like our friends Ben and Jess, they spent 2 months in the
Paying
marina,
fees.
2 months in the marina, couldn't move
Yeah.
because couldn't get rego, going through the deals, trying to do all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it does take time. So let's just touch on, I guess, what a yacht broker does, like what you guys do.
Yeah.
And I guess we could talk about how that is also globally, like when you're talking to the yacht brokers over there and, and the way they work, and I guess the way to get the best out of your yacht broker.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I was a cruiser before I was a yacht broker. I got to see both sides of things, and I didn't realise before I became a yacht broker, I didn't realise exactly what a yacht broker did or could do. So I think firstly, important to know is a yacht broker doesn't make any money until he sells the boat.
Yep.
And so that's very important. I find that you've got to trust your yacht broker, or be able to trust your yacht broker. If you suspect he's not straight, well, you can see boats by other means. But
And you're saying yacht and trust them on both sides, buying and selling?
buying and selling,
Yeah.
you've got to be able to trust the yacht broker, because look, there's not a lot of bad yacht brokers. There's some inexperienced yacht brokers. So when I say trust, it's trusting his judgment, because most of my clients don't know exactly what they want or need. And the problem that I have, I often find myself, I have to pull myself up because I find myself telling them what they should do, which is wrong. You should listen. But I find that if you can get a yacht broker you can trust, you respect, whatever, or at least you understand where he's coming from, you will have a lot more opportunities, a lot more, you'll be introduced to more boats. So say you see a range of boats advertised by a yacht broker, you could probably double that as to what he has access to. And that's just locally. So if you trust your yacht broker, he'll introduce you to more boats. You potentially will get better deals because he'll give preference to you. What a yacht broker does for the money is what you find is the alternative is selling or buying private. It sometimes works. The problem is if you're buying private or selling private, usually the buyer will want a better deal. So you're actually no better off. He'll expect a better deal, otherwise he'll go through a yacht broker. So that's first to know. So it can be financially, it usually doesn't work out. When people come to buy a boat, mostly they're responding to it. They don't know exactly what they're after. So say we advertise a Beneteau 39. Once that client comes to me, I will be introducing him more than likely to many other boats because he doesn't know. He's on the boat, it's not the right boat. So 9 out of 10, they've come to see the wrong boat and they didn't know it. So as a yacht broker, we have a much broader range, we draw a much bigger audience, and for that reason, there's more chance of selling your boat.
A lot of our viewers are also in the wings of trying to buy a boat. So what should you be doing as the buyer to be getting the most out of your broker?
It's interesting, in buying a boat, people don't use a broker. It's when they're selling a boat, but actually buying a boat, you'll be visiting brokers. The most important, if you are visiting a broker to buy a boat, just be completely open.
Yeah.
There's no point in holding it. We find that it's like used car sales. Worry about used car sales with being sold something they don't want. You're better off utilising that person and his knowledge. So the worst thing can be is closed. Not tell him you've only got $50,000. Or mislead, because he won't show you the correct boat. So most yacht brokers are ethical. They're quite experienced. So the most important thing to visiting a broker is to be completely open and honest with what you want. Give him a list, and if he doesn't have what you're asking for, he'll find it. And keep persisting. Call him up in a week's time, say, have you found something? And it's great working with people who are proactive. And so if you see a boat, you don't like it, tell him why. Tell him what's wrong with the boat. Tell him what you prefer. Don't be embarrassed by your budget. In finding boats for people, I've had people come in and they've got a $10,000 budget. I've got people with a $100,000 budget. We don't mind. It's a lot of fun for us anyway. And we match people with the boat. So that's it.
Yeah. We definitely... Croatia in itself, like, I mean, I'm always just Googling stuff. So I'm just like, yacht broker review Croatia. And, you know, it's like... Up comes like hate websites on like some yacht brokers, and like I'm always the one on the forums like, has anyone used this yacht broker before? Like, any advice? There was 2 yacht brokers. I think our yacht broker, firstly, Sasha, was
excellent.
He was great.
Yeah.
Like,
he was just honest.
He himself was young. It was his dad's business, but he was awesome. Like, I thought. I mean, it is difficult. I found it daunting being in another language and another culture and how they do things differently. So I would also, so I'm just going to go back a step in saying, when we went to Croatia to buy a boat, we surrounded ourselves with a team of people who we could rely on. Firstly being Rod, and secondly being our surveyor, Dave Holmes. And between the two of you, it was like, I could double check everything our surveyor was doing with you, and then survey wise and boat condition was awesome to say, hey, I'm looking at this Beneteau, and you know boats, most of the models, you're like, yeah, actually that model had those bad keels, or yep, that model's got that dodgy thing here, that's a really solid model. So I really liked having those people in your back pocket. It is definitely one reason why we're coming back to you now, because it's like that advice and that support that you gave us in the beginning, which in fairness was like free. Like, it was just free advice in the hope that it would get us into a boat that we could go travel the world, and maybe that boat would end up here. But also having a surveyor in your back pocket, so like wherever you live, there's going to be those people around. So find those people.
If you're ever selling a boat, I find that you're better off finding a bigger yacht brokerage. It's quite simple. I used to think before I became a yacht broker that I'd give my boat to a broker who would focus on my boat. Yeah, 2 or 3 listings because he'll focus on it. But it doesn't work, because what you want is traffic. You want somebody who's lots of boats, lots of traffic. So someone comes in and you have a range of boats to sell them. So that's really it was a very good lesson I learned early. Always find a good sized broker, not the biggest, but good sized brokerage with lots of stock, lots of boats, lots of experience with that brand.
We found that too as well. Like, we didn't just speak to Rod, as he knows. We spoke to a couple of other brokers just to see what the go was, and their commission was slightly lower, but what we did find was their network was not nearly as good as DBY's, because DBY has reach, not just in Australia, it's global, and we couldn't really find anyone who could compete with that. So yeah, I do agree with that.
Yeah, and we also, and remember when we went to her name was Nina.
Yeah.
And remember she had like,
she was amazing.
But she had that list. She must have had like 600 boats.
Yeah, she was just going through the list, going, give me 1 second, please.
Yeah, she had like 600 boats that she was like going through, like, oh yeah, and there were so many boats on there that were not advertised.
Yeah, they work quite different. The European brokers network. Yeah. So what they do, the difference between the Australian brokers and the European brokers, is what they do is they advertise everybody's boats, and they're selling each other's boats. Whereas Australia, we have exclusive listings in general. Now, a good tip if you're working with European brokers and you've got multiple listings is, if a broker has the original listing, it will probably end up a better deal for you because they're not double paying on commission.
Oh,
Anything
right.
networked, the commission is shared.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So whereas a boat that's out the front of a yacht broker and it's in his window, you will have a price advantage there. There's a few little tricks that do happen.
Interesting. I didn't realise that. So like,
Yeah.
she might have had 600 boats, but like 500 of them might have been also other brokers.
Yeah, which is fine.
Yeah.
But there's double sharing commission.
Yeah.
The way commission works around the world is if a broker has a boat, so we have your boat for sale. If another broker wants to, we invite other brokers to sell your boat as well. If they have a buyer, they can ring us up. And basically, the commission is split in half.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yep.
In Europe, that's how most of the transactions happen. They're splitting it. In Australia, it doesn't happen so
Doesn't
often.
have as much. Yeah. So let's talk about the process, I guess beginning to end, like just so people get an idea of like how it works. So let's literally start with, here we are, we're Avalon, we have a boat for sale.
The important thing to remember is that people think if they're selling a boat, the broker's working for them.
Yep.
The reality is the broker is just working to get a deal done between the two, the buyer and seller. I often get told, are you working for me or are you working for him? I say, well, look, I'm actually right in the middle.
Yep.
That's why you have a broker.
Yep.
So sometimes it may feel like I'm working for the seller. All I'm trying to do is get a deal done.
Yep.
Negotiation stage, very rarely will someone offer full price. We submit every offer.
Yep.
And there's no point in if you get an offer, there's no point in taking your bat and ball and running home because it's a low offer. The secret in negotiation is you always come back with a counter offer.
Yep.
Whether it be, it doesn't. You just got to keep it running. You don't lose a buyer, no matter how insulting it is. That's another reason why to have a broker. If you are selling privately, you have people on your boat. It's so personal, particularly on a cruising boat. She's the love of your life. She's your baby. Someone tells you, oh, this is broker, you just want to throw him overboard.
Yeah.
Another good reason for broker. So negotiation pro, just keep the, try not to lose a buyer.
momentum.
Keep it going.
Yep.
It might not get somewhere, but it often will. Usually the first buyer on a boat is the buyer. Keep it going. It's
Interesting.
probably 80% of the time. The first offer becomes the
Right. Wow, interesting.
It's very important. Negotiation, once there is an offer accepted, it's always subject to survey. We talk about the sea trial. We make the sea trial the last thing on the survey.
Yep.
Because we want the buyer to commit.
Yep.
So he's put money up to slip the boat. It's up, down.
Yeah.
Money's been spent. By the time you take him for his free run, which is only a short run around the bay, with a surveyor on board, he's committed. He's not going to use you up and use us up, which happens in the case of companies that do lots of sea trials. It's different with buying new boats, where they've got to test them, but certainly second-hand boats. So, the offer is subject to survey. The survey is the cost of the buyer. When the now at survey, if there's any issues found, there usually is. It's important when you're listing your boat that you disclose everything that's wrong with the boat.
Yep.
Because it'll come out.
Yep.
So you don't want to, and then it's not a negotiable surprise when it's found at survey. So if you've disclosed everything, you'll find nothing.
Yep.
At survey, there's usually stuff found. The best way I find, if there are items found, is to try to get away with cash. If you're a seller, it's good to have a cash settlement. Get it over and done with.
Yep.
If you're a buyer, it's better if you can to get the person to fix it.
Yep.
Because it usually costs more than what you expect.
Yep.
But it just depends on your circumstances.
Yep. So touching on that, when we bought Avalon, I actually did quite a bit of research. I probably went out to about 5 different surveyors at the time. And it was interesting when you're talking before of like whose side is the broker on. He's in the middle, but your surveyor is the one. If you're the buyer, the surveyor is the one who is on your side. That's how I saw it. It was like, I'm going to go and get my surveyor. He's on my side. He's the one that should be taking care of me, looking after all those little things on the side. I got a few draft reports from surveyors to see what kind of stuff they got. Like some people give you a 3-page document, some people give you a 50-page document. It was like a completely different level of service was what some people in Croatia as well, but different levels of experience. And for me, again, just being completely honest with them. Like we just said to our surveyor, this is our first boat. We're going to sail this around the world. Like, we don't want any little iffy things. It's like we're putting all our money into this. So if we find that there is something crucially wrong with this boat that you think that we should not be buying it, you know, I don't want to be out there in the South Pacific and go, oh, yeah, that little thing you said, you know. It's like getting all that on the table with them, because I found he came really prepared and like on our side with a really clear mindset of what this boat needs to do. It's like, you know, it's a different story if it was like, oh, we're just looking for a little weekender that might potter around here. It's like, no, we need a boat that is going to be up to the challenge of going around the world. They're going to find all those bits for you. And for us, I think he probably saved us maybe 15 grand.
Yeah.
And on your point, we definitely went down the lines of we want them to fix it. They were not going to budge on price. So in our experience, the seller was not budging on price, but being the marina, they already had the staff there. So I think for them it was cheaper in the long run just to fix it all themselves. They've got the crane, they can haul it out, they can change that stuff. So
it's really important on the buying side is going back pre-broker. We did rush some of our purchases, and it cost us in the long run. So caution in the purchasing of the boat. Even if you've got a surveyor, I always say you've got to be your own surveyor as well.
Definitely.
It's like often you should be your own accountant as well. You can trust yourself. So I've rushed things and I've missed things, and the surveyors missed things, and it's cost in the long run. So it's a crucial part of the process. It's your day, it's your time. So why not just take the time to find it? You know, it does vary with the types of boats you're buying. Like if it's a production boat, there's less to find. If you're buying a heavy displacement boat, you've just got to be so careful, because you can buy a $100,000 boat with $100,000 worth of issues easily if you do it wrong. On the surveyor process and picking a surveyor, it's super important, and definitely someone you know that's already had one for sure is a big advantage. We've called out surveyors. Our daughter bought a boat in Spain 5 years ago, and they sailed it back. And she got caught in a storm in the Med. I think the third night out. And we patched our surveyor, who surveys our boat. He patched in at 2 o'clock in the morning to sort her out. So that's the relationship I have with my surveyor. So that sort of trust is there. So they got sorted out in the middle of the night, got his motor going.
Awesome. And as we said, like, I had our Australian surveyor, my friend Dave Holmes from Holmes Marine, like really like our family friends, but if I was to do it all over again and I didn't have those connections, it's like I would still go to a local surveyor, build a relationship with that person, tell them what you're thinking of doing, and like they might even do it for a small, like a couple of $100 of like, I'm going over there, can I just send you photos, you give me advice on the go, like I'm not going to ask you to come all the way over here. Or, you know, could you give me some advice on like this survey report that they've given me? Like, you know, I've got this Croatian guy, he's given me this big report. What do you think about it? Are these major issues? Is there something he hasn't checked here? I don't know how to do an osmosis test. Has he done the right thing? Like,
what did you find on your boat? What was wrong with yours when you bought it?
So, as I told you about the engine. So they had replaced the engine, but they put it on the old engine mounts.
Right. Okay.
And those engine mounts weren't the right ones, and so there was lots of vibration on the shaft, which also made our rear seal leak.
The gooseneck was about to
the gooseneck. So they did that.
But they didn't do that.
They were meant to, but they didn't. They put a shitty one on. But funny you say about running aground. Like our boat, we asked them, has the boat ever been run aground? No. And then we pulled it out, and there was like the back corner of our rudder
Right.
was like missing.
Okay.
And so my heart sank because the surveyor kind of sent me, oh, I've done your survey, just by the way, here's a photo, the rudder's been run aground. But once again, like, he spent probably 2 days on our boat, which is like, all surveyors work differently, but he did a full 2 days.
Awesome, that's awesome.
And he went through that whole rudder system. He went through all the bearings. He checked it all, top to bottom, how it all in, like making sure it was sealed, all that kind of stuff. So his recommendation, the actual surveyor's recommendation at the end was like, we can repair it. I think it's just been, we think what had happened was they were probably reversing back into a dock or something and just hit a rock or went a bit too far or something like that. Probably that was the most major part of our negotiation. Was with the seller saying, all right, well, look, you told us the boat hadn't been run aground, but it obviously has, and we feel like you knew about it. The rudder itself, we're about to sail around the world, and it's like, if possible, we would rather just replace the rudder. Like, we can get a brand new one, but unfortunately they just wouldn't budge. They wouldn't. I tried everything of like, do you want to go halves in the rudder? I reckon it's going to cost you €1,000 to repair the rudder. Like, just take 1,000. And at the end of the day, they just said, we're just going to do it. And so after they did it, we got the surveyor back. He checked it all again. And what can I say? It was fine. All right, we've done the survey. And we've now done either a cash settlement or agreed to fix something on the boat. So I guess now you guys are dealing with the whole legal contract side.
And it's very important. Particularly buying boats overseas, we talk about worst case scenario stuff, okay? I'll give you a story. So this is worst case scenario, which so this was this is in the middle 90s, late 90s, and we were buying a boat in Croatia, which was just coming out of the war, so it was a pretty sketchy place to buy. We're one of the first. I think I was one of the first to buy in Croatia. Good deal. But what happened is ownership is really important. So when buying a boat, you've got to establish that you've got clear ownership, and there's a number of things you can do to ensure that, and that goes beyond relying on that broker. You need to rely on obviously your own legal advice, etc. But anyway,
for us, and just on knowing that, for us, that was our Croatian surveyor.
Right.
I made sure in my scope, I put in there that he would check all that for the ownership. And that was from what you're about to tell us. But
crucial.
He did all the checks. He was the legal side of that.
Right. So our situation was we bought a boat in Croatia. It was Croatian flagged. It was owned by a German, and it was held by a charter company. It was very iffy, but anyway, we got through most of that, and the way you do get through that clearly is to try to get Australian registration before you complete the purchase. Because by getting your own flag, it's usually going through all these tick boxes, which makes you do all the processes that there's no money owed on boat, etc. In our case, we just ran out of time, and I had temporary Australian registration. I paid for the boat in full. Brokers, there's no alarm bells ringing. I had to get clearance from the local port captain. I went to get clearance from the local port captain to leave. I was going to single-hand it out, and the guy said basically $20,000 US, and I looked at him for clearing the Croatian flag. Basically what it was a bribe. It was a full-on bribe. $20,000. So instantly I laughed and said, you're joking. And he just told me to F off, and they impounded the boat. So the boat was locked into the harbours. Into the harbour dock. Locked inside. It was chained to the dock. I paid for the boat in full. And ultimately what happened is I flew someone out. And at night, we cut the boat free and we took it out. We took it.
Oh my God, your heart must have been
It was
pounding.
terrifying.
Yeah.
We took it across to Brindisi with no clearance or anything, and
Wow.
but the Italians.
Yeah.
And
They don't care at the
but
best
that's
of times.
almost, that shows you the worst case scenario. And it was just a process problem back in the old days. But that was.
And so you'd actually had all your clearance was
clear.
fine. You had your registration was actually all fine. Ownership was fine. It was just someone wanted a bribe at the end.
It was a bribe related to, and what his story was. He was telling us the Croatian flag hadn't been cleared, and this is what it's going to the fee, you know.
Yeah.
But it processed so, and it hadn't. I hadn't cleared the Croatian flag, so I couldn't at the time.
Yeah, sure.
So, but now things have come along a long way.
Yeah.
And most cases things are much straighter, but you still have to do due diligence. How do you know who owns the boat you bought?
Yeah.
What you've got to do your research on the past, and in saying everything, we've done thousands of transactions, and I think my case was the worst. I haven't had a boat issue since, but you do have to be careful.
Absolutely. I think, as you said, it's just doing your own due diligence, and also, again, trusting the people you're working with. Like, for us, it was our broker in Croatia who did all that.
Yeah.
He was the one that got the flag done. He was the one that knew the local process, because it was a bit of a shit show.
Yeah.
Like, you got to go over to some customs guy, got to go back to the port captain, go to a bank to deposit exactly 223 euros to them for some, like,
It's a lot.
if you're trying to do that by yourself for a first time, it can be quite nerve-wracking.
It's good having a devil. I think it's interesting in the process. I spend a lot of time working with people who are buying boats overseas.
Yep.
And as you said, I do it free, but it's not free because if I do the right thing, the network, I get the listings many years, or friends of friends come to me.
Yep.
But I think you need a devil's advocate. If you're buying a boat, whether it be in Caribbean or Europe, I think it's good to you have your surveyor, you have your local broker, but you need someone like myself.
Yeah.
Who can just put up the red flags and say, have you checked that? Have you done this?
Yep.
And it just weeds it out if there is something strange happening.
So we've done the survey, done the negotiation. You guys basically handle the transaction.
Yeah.
So the buyer will send you the cash.
Yeah.
You will then take out your commission, whatever else, and return the rest to the seller.
Yeah, so usually there is a bit of a leap of faith at the end because once the broker gets paid in full, the buyer can take the boat.
Yep.
We have your money.
Yep.
So that's the last process. The money's in the broker's account. Once it's in the broker's account, deal's done. Then you get set to the funds. That's how it normally works.
Yeah.
I think if I was buying overseas, and depending on the area, you could probably reverse that a bit and ensure the money's in your account before you do the final sign off of the flag of the boat.
Yeah.
Try to keep something in hand.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah, we paid our deposit and pretty much did everything after that. So that deposit was paid, we'd sign an agreement, yes, we're paying for it. Yes, you have ownership, and now we're paid.
Right.
I think that's the way it went.
That was it.
But that was still one of the most heart-wrenching experiences, sending
The last money.
on an app on your phone to some Croatian account, and you're just like,
Yeah.
all right, let's just see what happens.
It's big, isn't it? It's big.
And away it went. It was just like, all right.
Yeah.
And as you said, it is a bit of a leap of faith, but
There's so many people doing it now that there's enough information on the baddies and the goodies,
let's talk about some of the opportunities, I guess, you see in the market. Like, we are, you had great opportunities, 20 years ago sailing the other way. Like, what do you see now as kind of the opportunities?
It's very interesting. It's
If you want to tell them, by the way.
No. Well, firstly,
you can keep it to yourself. If you want
no.
to.
Firstly, it's exchange rate driven.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You've watched for a crashing currency.
Yeah.
If you see Croatian, so it's on the euro. But if you see, the Mexican peso crashing by a boat in Mexico, take to a place where the currency is strong, like the US. So there's opportunities in moving boats from a weak economy to a strong economy. There is opportunity at the moment with multi-hulls. So the market is strongly
exploded.
going to multi-hulls because they're becoming the old days, you've got to buy a heavy displacement boat to go cruising. Can't buy a production boat. We all bought production boats, they're better.
Yeah.
And now it's you've got to buy a production boat because catamarans capsize. Well, they don't capsize, they don't break up, and they're better. If you can afford a good one, I'm going to say, it is a great way to cruise. Very comfortable, very easy, safe, fun. It's expensive. So the opportunity is, just look at our market here. So if a new model is launched in Europe, which is sensational, or a good model, and it hasn't been launched here yet, there's a great opportunity. It won't be here for a year.
Yeah.
Pick one up, sail it back, and you'll have tremendous time and probably make a bit of money. That's an example.
Yeah.
They're the opportunities. It's all, but it's doing the research as what model, what boat will sell here.
People often ask us, actually, why did you buy that specific boat? And the main reason is Rod gave us a little template of what's going to sell well when we get back to Sydney, and that's basically what we ended up with buying. It's not necessarily the ideal boat we would go for, but it was the boat that was going to sell well here. I'm glad we picked this boat because she did.
And it's not like your plan can't change along the way,
exactly.
but it was like we knew that we probably wanted to sail back here. We knew that we wanted to spend time around where we live sailing, and if our boat was here, then it also made sense to think about what kind of boat would sell here. Our market here is, for what we have, is probably your entry-level monohull for a small family. We've got 3 bedrooms. It's the perfect weekender to take out in the harbour. It's a manageable size. It's cheap. Like, when you got to think about your marinas and your moorings and all that kind of stuff, like, it's going to be cheaper and for that entry level. So yeah, I think all those kind of things are pretty important to think about.
I think when you bought a newer, smaller, it's better than older, bigger. Now this is just the perfect size, and for international or local, it's perfect size, and value for money. These boats are just tremendous. So and reliable. The person who buys this boat will buy it for X price, and they're going to get close to what they buy it for in 3 years' time. What an amazing investment, This boat here, the comparable is another one of these that's local. And there's a huge difference. People may think that a boat sailed 15,000 miles is used. It's completely the reverse. It's proven.
Proven.
And it's continually upgraded. It's ready to go. Whereas a local boat, often the motors are glazed over, the instruments are all not working, etc., because they're not used. So a used boat like this has many advantages over a local boat.
What about some tips? So you've got people who are out there looking at boats and stuff like that. Let's not go into like forensic detail, but like, what are just like maybe your top 5 things of like things that you should be looking at
for a cruising boat?
For a cruising boat, let's just use ours as a model. And I know you're not a surveyor, but like it's just like, what are the certain things that you would be looking at?
Okay, so it's no doubt it's production. And once again, we sell a lot of non-production boats. We love them. We have a lot of people buying non-production boats. But me personally, I look for some reliability, production boat. Motor and rigging combine to a great portion of the value of a lot of the boats. So it's very important that you buy a boat with good motor, proven motor, with minimal hours or well maintained. And if it's got current rigging, that's a bonus. Otherwise, you'll be definitely going to replace the rigging. I like a boat that performs, and that's not to go fast. It's more for an easy ride. So I like I do like the modern boats because they have better performance, which means less pressure on the boat, less damage. You're going the speed of the waves rather than being picked up and turned by the waves. So I like a boat with a bit of performance. And reliability. Look for a boat that's really well put together. Unfortunately, some of the newer boats are getting very light on timbers, and we're seeing them 2 years later where the timbers are in very poor condition and they're going to have a bad resale.
Yeah.
Look for a boat, a good buy. You know, it's not hard if you've got just a little bit of time. You can find, and if you're narrow in your focus, so if you pick, okay, it's going to be one of these three brands between these. You can, rather than focus on, when you're going to purchase a boat, rather than focus on one boat, focus on 5. Make offers on 5.
Yeah.
And then you'll get your best deal. I don't know if that's how you did it.
Yeah, we did. So we made an offer on
3, I think.
Did you?
3 or 4.
Yeah.
3 or 4. We made an offer on.
Definitely 3.
Yeah. And also a bit of that. We were. I'm not going to say we weren't serious about buying those boats, but some of them were maybe a little bit out of our price range as well. And so we did go and see them, and we're like, this is actually a beautiful boat. We could see ourselves in this, but it's probably a little bit out of our price range. So we did make an offer, which would probably be considered a low ball of what we could actually afford, to just see like, hey, maybe they would actually come down and we could get into this kind of boat.
Yeah.
We also wanted to have a few options on the table, I guess. And there was the other boat we really liked was the Salona.
Yeah,
Salona 40.
Nice boat.
The only problem with that boat for us was like the storage.
Right.
And the comfort as well.
Yeah, it was a bit more of a performance cruiser.
Yeah.
Which in retrospect I would have loved to sail.
Yeah.
And I
Around
think
here.
we probably would have actually held on to it
Yeah.
here because I could see it something for the twilights.
Oh, yeah.
It was like
Fantastic. Yeah.
great for that. But back lockers, there's like no storage and all that kind of stuff. It was just like we kind of looked and like, where do we pull our stuff?
And the travellers were right kind of in front of the steering wheel, so you had to step over it the whole time.
Yeah, but you know the interesting thing about that, I'm glad you did it, because you would have cost you on the resale side of things.
Yeah.
Some of these performance, when you're buying in view to eventually selling, the problem with performance boats, if travellers in the middle, etc., is they're very hard to sell.
Yeah.
So if I look back at our track record, the ones we struggle with the most are like the first, Renetos,
Exactly. Yeah.
which I love, but they're difficult to sell, and the resale is the market is much smaller, but fun to sell.
Yeah, and that's and if you are a racer, you kind of appreciate it as well. Of like, if I'm actually going to go buy a racing boat, I'm just going to go buy a racing boat for the twilights.
That's it.
Like,
Exactly.
and if you're buying a cruising boat, you're like, well, I'm probably not really into my racing.
No.
So it's like, for me, it was like a nice thing. Oh, I can sail around the world. I can go twilight racing. But we've just said, like, if we want to do twilights here, let's just go and buy a racing boat.
Yeah, proper one.
Yeah, and actually be competitive. Like, so.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see us in a cat as well.
I'd like to have a go. Like, so we're gonna go racing with Rod and Carrie, his wife, one day on his performance catamaran, and can't wait. It was supposed to be today, but the weather's just a little bit
Would have been a fun ride.
Yeah, it would have been a hell ride. But so that's going to happen one day, and we'll take you guys along.
Yeah.
So that will be our first try on a cat. But yeah, I thought we were mono all the way, but the more people we speak to, I really want to try a cat. So
yeah,
you never know.
So a very interesting lesson I learned also is that when you're looking at budgets to buy a boat, you probably remember me saying this, and you probably appreciate it more now, is try to extend as much as possible. With boats, it's a little bit. It's one of those things, because it's a dream you're in. I found that stretching yourselves to buy the boat, get the better boat, the bigger boat. It's always stretch out. People on us, if you ask to restrict your budget and go the other way, often it works back to front, and you have more maintenance.
Yeah.
You struggle on that side.
Yeah.
You have regrets because you wished you'd had something a bit better. And the resale at the end, you do worse because you got less invested. So I've always encouraged people to beg, borrow, steal to go that next level up. So if you can't afford that 40 quid, just push to do it, because it usually comes back in the end. And we did we started off with, built the boat, then we had an old boat, then we had a really old boat, then we got, at the end we were getting into brand new boats. and it still worked. The formula of resale and getting money back, it all worked.
Yeah.
So we would have been better off all the time with new boats.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can stretch through it.
If you can stretch
So
it.
you
If
have
you can
all
stretch
this-
through it.
Yeah.
You have all this spare money to spend on cocktails or whatever,
Yeah.
but you don't have your dream boat, and I think that's
You
huge.
always stretch that next level, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also when you were kind of explaining that to us at the beginning, it was like if you just said as a rough number, like if you're buying from what you buy in Europe and what you're selling in Australia, if you could say, let's say 30%, what you're buying for 100 grand there, you might be able to sell for 130 here.
Yeah.
Likewise, what you're buying for 300 grand over there, you might be able to sell for 390 back here. Like you're still making that 30%.
Exactly.
But we also kind of went off your rule of thumb of what it would cost.
Yeah.
And I reckon it was kind of spot on in terms of living.
Yeah.
We spent more on the boat than we expected. But when we set off, your bit of advice was like, let's try to get us into about $100,000 boat. In that mark, we're going to have to probably spend 10 grand up front on whatever boat you buy, just to get it up and running, and probably cruising,
Which we did.
and then at least another 10, I'm going to say 20
Yeah.
ongoing.
I think maybe even more. I think more than that. I think 30
Was it?
on ongoing maintenance. Because we had a few unlucky things in some unlucky places where we didn't have much choice but to.
Yeah.
There was just things that you just can't anticipate, and also I say this in terms of like we put a small budget together for safety gear.
Yeah.
But we really didn't know what safety gear we wanted.
Yeah.
And when we actually sat down and said, we're about to cross the Atlantic, and I sat down as a captain and was like, I'm taking 3 other people out here, suddenly you go, actually, you know what, we were going to spend $2,000 on safety gear, now we're going to spend 6.
Yeah.
Just because of the stuff that you hope you never use and just gets out of date and you never use it. But
We ended up spending about $4,000 on safety gear, which.
Did you?
it
Yeah.
was 5 or something, yeah.
Yeah, about $4,500.
And you didn't use it.
Didn't use it, yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah.
It was really good to know that we had it.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
And replacing the rigging and all those little bits along the way, and the comfort side, like you can't anticipate how you want to live and cruise.
No.
Like we met people in the South Pacific who arrived in the Marquesas. They were on, I think it was a 28-foot Starcraft,
Amazing.
no refrigeration,
Yeah.
no nav gear, went off an iPad, no water pump. They had a foot pump.
Wow.
Like, I think they had 1 battery. Like, complete bare bones.
No outboard.
Yeah, no outboard.
Wow.
They just rode. Like, and once again, I wouldn't say that they were having any less fun than us.
They were just drunk the whole time.
Yeah.
They got through it. They were real pirates.
Yeah, because they couldn't refrigerate wine or beers.
Yeah.
They just drank spirits. But, it was like a completely different mindset. Like, I think they bought their boat for like $15,000.
Yeah.
Sailing around the South
And
Pacific, like.
And the lady was the captain.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And then you met people who did have the new $500,000 Beneteau with radars, washing machines, dishwashers, water makers,
But it's all the same.
all that stuff. And then you know what?
Washing machine.
They spent just as much time trying to fix the washing machine. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
so. As I said, I would say you got 10 grand whatever boat you buy to set up. I reckon if we're doing 18 months again, I'd be putting 20 grand for improvements, and then it depends on your own comfort as to what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then I think you're pretty spot on with about 25 grand a year to live for 2 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is about
Yeah.
$2,000 a month.
Yeah.
What boat do you think we should get next, Rod?
I'm always leaning towards what would I have.
Yeah.
To suggest, this is always my problem. I'm often find myself.
Yeah, but you've been sailing for what,
Look,
30
I
years or
think-
40
Yeah.
years? Like, we trust
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It all comes down to, but look, I really would love to see you guys in a multi-hull.
Yeah.
Right?
I really would. Different experience. You'll do things slightly differently. You have access to more places, and it's an easy ride. you'll enjoy the sailing more. It's doing it. You'll do it much easier on the Mulligan.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. Thanks so much to Rod. As we've already plugged a few times, DBY Yachting talked to Rod Waterhouse, and I know you're going to have lots of questions. I thought this video was going to save me from questions, but now there's just going to be more. But I think there's plenty of takeaways from it, and if you do have more specific questions, just get in touch with Rod.
Yeah, I spend most of my day answering emails. It's all free advice. I love doing it. It's my passion. So just send them through, and I'll see if I can help.
Yeah, and we actually, Ben and Jess, who YouTube have met, our friends.
Yeah, Ben and Jess from Mac.
Yeah, when we first met them, we were talking. I was like, oh, I've got my mate Rod Waterhouse, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I met him on a forum. And he met you on a forum, and he was like, he helped us buy the Jeanneau. Like, he was recommending the Jeanneau, and I'm like, that's so funny. Like, I'm here talking about you, and it's like, yeah. So anyway, if you've got questions, send them over to Rod, but you can also send them our way, and we can divert them. And yeah, awesome. Thanks so much,
Good on you. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Okay. See you later.